telling you, after the Tampa game this year, I am going to post the meme from SpongeBob. How many times we got to teach you this lesson, old man? Because I mean, the pro Tampa Bay media is driving me crazy. They really are. Anyway, welcome to Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Bob Rose. Sean is out tonight. He is out sick. And I know Bob's fighting with stuff, the flu as well. I've got a cough that's been hanging around since January. So as I cough right on cue. So, it's just one of those things. Life post-COVID, I guess. Bob, you had to cut out early last week, and we ended up talking for an extra half hour on the air afterwards because we kind of got sidetracked and went on the topic Sean could talk about for a while, I guess. So we got Jarvis Landry, and the LSU contingent is losing their mind. Yeah, we are banged up, always. The LSU contingent's losing their mind. They want more LSU players to be signed. Darnell Williams got signed this week. And Jarvis Landry's openly courting Odell Beckham Jr. to come to the Saints. What is your take on this? And would you sign Odell Beckham knowing you probably won't even get him on the field until probably late October, early November at the earliest?
Alan, with this roster as it is right now, I wouldn't touch Odell Beckham, a healthy Odell Beckham Jr. with a 10-foot pole. I don't think he's a good fit for the system. I don't think he's a good fit at all for the locker room. Now, I'll give OBJ a little tiny bit of credit. He seems to have matured a tiny bit, but I stand by what I said. Now, having said that, and the reason I say it is that there's only so many balls to go around.
Yeah.
Michael Thomas, although we've certainly seen worse, Michael Thomas is a diva wide receiver. He has a bit of a problem when he doesn't get targeted early and often. Jarvis Landry is to a lesser extent the same way. And we know Odell Beckham Jr. is infamous for being a petulant child. Just a couple of tantrums and meltdowns away from Antonio Brown, in my opinion. He's along that same ilk. You can't deny his talent, though. No. And although to me, I think Chris Olave is a much, much bigger upside than Beckham. Landry is a more consistent receiver than Beckham. And Michael Thomas dwarfs all of them in the way of talent and production. But like you said, Beckham's not going to be available until probably around Thanksgiving, realistically. Now, if his rehab goes well, he should be okay for the stretch run and the playoff run. If the Saints suffer another major injury in the receiving core, be it Thomas, Olave doesn't develop or gets hurt, or Landry goes down, then at that point, if Beckham is still on the market, you consider it, because I think you're foolish not to, if you're in the playoff race. But that's a lot of things that have to go wrong and still have a winning record to consider Odell Beckham Jr. That is literally the only way on God's green earth I would touch him.
I'm glad Calvin's saying all this shit about LSU.
No, I'm seeing a Calvin, and I'll just nod my head in silence.
I'm not an LSU fan either, and it's hard on me because I think part of this kind of this pushback about Sean Payton has been that, okay, now we've got Honey Badger, we've got Jarvis Landry, we're talking about, Odell Beckham wants to come in, we still can sign Quan Alexander, just until this morning, Darnell Williams was a possibility, let's just go and get Mettenberger out of retirement. Let's go find, go to Thaddeus Moss to fill our tight end problem. I mean, it's almost getting comical to an extent. Look, I think Landry fills a need as a slot guy for the
Sure.
for the Saints right now, who can play on the outside. I think Olave at the Y, and Thomas at the X. That's a really strong trio.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that Hardy now becomes kind of a wild card in the
Yeah.
mix. You're not relying on him to be the Jordan Jefferson. Here we go. Yeah, no, poor Ricky. I know Ricky personally. Ricky's knees are shot, so he was on the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the this is a good trio right now. And the thing about the Saints offense, you have to be able to play all three positions.
Yeah.
Not Callaway. Beckham is interesting from the standpoint of you could probably keep him away from going to Tampa Bay when Tampa Bay needs their receiver in October, November, because they're fighting to try and win the division again, and they're probably a game and a half behind the Saints at this point. At this point of the season, when Beckham becomes healthy, I feel like we're going overboard now. We're putting so many things into the receiver basket because there are Saints fans who, I guess, have been watching too much, Al Davis, Oakland Raiders highlights from the 60s and the 70s. And, they can hear the autumn wind and they can hear the Raiders music playing. And they're just picturing, Winston taking those 7-step drops and just throwing these bombs, like you're throwing to, oh hell, I can't believe I just forgot his name. Speed Kills, Cliff Branch.
Clifford Branch, according to Al Davis.
Yes. Clifford Branch or Warren Wells if you're really old, and it's the Mad Bomber after Darryl LaMonica passed away a couple weeks ago, so got to mention him. But yeah, I mean it's like they want this thing just to throw it deep all game now, and what I want to see in this offense is what we saw in the Peyton, a controlled passing game where you eat clock, with long sustained drives, a lot of running, a lot of passes to Kamara underneath. And then, when you get past midfield, you take the shot play. Once you set that defense up, you get those safeties to start to cheat up. So you get the one-on-one matchups, and it's just, yeah, see, Will agrees with me. I get it. You've got a strong arm quarterback now, and you've got receivers who can run deep. You've got the bomb, and you're willing to use it. To quote Al Davis, we've got the speed. But that's not what wins football games. It makes great ESPN highlights.
Yeah.
But it's not what wins football games. So, I think right now at this point we need to focus more on. I still would like to see us, bring in another running back. I'd like to see us. I know we brought a tight end today, and I saw you wrote a little something up about him. What can you tell me about this tight end? I know we talked about Crow last week, but or 2 weeks ago, and I'm losing track of time. What about this tight end?
He's for Saints fans that don't know, New Orleans signed tight end Kyle Waring today. He was a third-round pick in 2019 by the Texans out of San Diego State. A lot of Saints fans with short memories, for those of you that were wrong, we're really wanting the Saints to draft Waring back in 2019. And I saw some mock drafts have him as high as a second-round pick. He hasn't done much in the pros. He missed his first year and a half, because of various undisclosed injuries. He was on injured reserve for that whole time. He has a career total of, I think, 4 games played, 3 receptions for 32 yards. That's the downside. The upside is he is a real athletic guy at 6'5", about 250, former basketball player. So he boxes out well. And I'm just basing this off of college film. So little to go off pros. He boxes out well. He knows and is learning how to work the middle of the field, and he can get down the seam in a hurry. Has real natural soft hands. But realistically, folks, even in this awful tight end unit, he's a long shot to make it. He's probably a practice squad developmental guy. A lot of people are probably saying at this point or when reading the article, oh, he's nothing more than a camp body. Guys, except for Taysom Hill, who we know what he can do as far as versatility, all these guys, Adam Troutman and Nick Vanette included, would be camp bodies for most NFL teams. The Saints are just throwing whatever they can, pick up at the wall and seeing what sticks. Worrying Lucas Krull, who is a hell of a receiver, just as soft as wet paper as a blocker. Those guys are going to wow the training camp crowd with some wonderful catches and routes. But I wouldn't expect much from the position as a whole, as wide receivers. We got to see how these guys hold up as blockers, whether they could seal the edge as run blockers. Because this passing game, with as deep as this receiving core now, and just as Alan said, this passing game is going to revolve around Kamara, of course, Michael Thomas, Olave's development, and Jarvis Landry. That's as simple as that. If you get a little bit of receiving production out of the tight end, that's gravy. But that's not what Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael are looking for right now.
Yeah, I mean, my attitude basically is you're probably going to see the Saints run a lot of 11 and 12 formations. I'm actually interested in who the fullback's going to be this year. Where the tight end is really a blocker. And then short yardage stuff you're going to see, and this is the important thing for me with Hurst. If Penning can win the starting left tackle job, and that would be an incredible feat if he does. Yeah. But if he can win that starting left tackle job in week 1, then Hurst becomes that blocking tight end position when they go to the jumbo, the goal line packages. That's where he would be important. I'm also curious to see what happens with Throckmorton and Pete and Ruiz. I mean, Ruiz has to make a step forward. That's going to be Doug Marone's pet project this year, as well as getting Penning up to speed. But that's going to be really what they're going to be focusing on. We've got to get this offensive line to be a run blocking offensive line that can push people around. Mm-hmm. Because if they can't do that, they can't get those openings for Alvin Kamara. You can have all the speed you want in the receiving core, but they're going to load up the box and just send guys in free to come kill Jameis Winston. That's how they'll stop those receivers, and that's the downside. You guys that want the Oakland Raiders offense that you saw in NFL films of throwing the ball deep, it takes a little time to set up and throw, a deep pass. And if they're sending guys in clean, he's not getting Winston's not getting enough time to set up back there to get that ball away. And the safety will just sit back waiting for the ball to come in and pick it off by finishing off the route. You have to be able to run the football, and we have to be able to run the football with a solid offensive line. And that
exactly. And
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and by running the football, that opens up Winston's strengths, the play action pass and the short passes to get those safeties to come up. So then he can have the one-on-one matchups where Chris Olave can blow past the corner, or Michael Thomas can make the quick slant and turn the slant into a 15-yard gain, or a guy like Jarvis Landry, who's a much better route runner than Odell Beckham is, can, do those clear-out routes and the shallow cross and do those sort of things. So then now Hardy becomes a legitimate receiver, running a seam route, or running, the jet sweep or whatever, that's all part of it.
Hey, you're exactly right. And, and people that talk about, and, you and I both, take jabs at the people that seem to want to go to that Al Davis bombs away attack. Older NFL fans know this. That Raiders attack was actually predicated on a power running game that set
Absolutely.
up Kenny Stabler. There was a reason why Kenny Stabler could stand up like that viper in the pocket and have all day to survey. Two reasons. A, he had one of the best offensive lines in the history of football. B, it was set up by play action, which, by the way, is an underrated strength of Jameis Winston. People like to knock Jameis's interceptions and decision making from when he was in Tampa, and Jameis deserves a lion's share of the blame. There's no doubt. But he was asked to run a play action deep passing game when Tampa Bay had zero running game to speak of and zero offensive line to offer protection or run blocking. Without a question, that's still going to be what Dennis Allen and the New Orleans Saints are going to look for, is to dominate the trenches, dictate the pace of the game with the running game and short passing game. That will open up your shots down the field. That will open up play action, and that will open up everything underneath for your Thomas slants. And your Jarvis Landry slant ends and Kamara wheel routes.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we're talking about the Raiders a second ago. Yeah, they used to make fun of John Madden, says you always run to the left. Well, you got Art Shell and Gene Upshaw right next to each other. Of course, I'm going to run that way. And, he ran. And it's funny, too. You think about the running backs they had. They ran a slew of running backs. They didn't have one guy. You had Marv Hubbard. You had Charlie. Is it Charlie Smith? Mark Van Egan. God, I'm going to blank on these names. Pete Banaszak. You had a bunch of different running backs they ran, and they all did different things. And that's kind of like what I think maybe. I put a comment up by John Butler, but he was saying he was kind of surprised on how this offseason has gone. He expected a lot more defensive signings and a lot of running backs, and here we are talking about passing game. But I think that, one of the things that Allen is thinking about is I'm going to rotate several backs in there. So it'll be interesting to see if we do a 3 or 4 back running attack. Just how these guys all shake out. That's why I was kind of disappointed that Williams signed with Arizona today.
Yeah.
Only because I think his speed on the outside really complemented Kamara well. You could put Kamara in a slot and you can have still the outside running plays with guys like the Baylor running back and Mark Ingram running inside, and maybe that he sees the Baylor kid as somebody who could maybe turn that corner, or maybe there is another back out there that we just haven't seen yet that is going to be able to turn the corner and make a play on the outside. So.
It's very possible, and I've said it before. I really liked Abram Smith's film, from Baylor when I broke it down, and I honestly didn't break down Smith's film until after the draft when the Saints signed him. But I really liked what I saw. And as far as other backs out there, Philip Lindsay, surprisingly, is still out there. He's a 2-time 1,000-yard rusher for the Denver Broncos. Jordan Howard, a name Saints fans know very well from his time with the Eagles and Bears before that. Howard's been derailed a little bit by injuries, but he's only, I think, 28, 29 years old, and he's a between the tackles thumper. And they could even, they being the Saints, could even turn back, go back to the future and hope to turn back the clock a little bit and bring back a guy like Latavius Murray. Calvin, I missed that. I apologize. Thank you for clearing that up. That Lindsay signed with the Colts.
I didn't know he did that either.
Yeah, I had no idea. But Jordan Howard, nonetheless, is still out there. You could even bring back a Latavius Murray, who might be effective on a limited snap count. Which he would be on a limited snap count if you had a Kamara and a healthy Ingram. And if you are correct, Allen, and Dennis Allen goes to a rotation of backs, Something that Sean Payton, by the way, did most of the way through his Saints career. That doesn't mean that Kamara is going to take a seat like other Saints backs would in the past. What that would do is allow Allen and Pete Carmichael to use Kamara to his strengths all around the offensive formation. Make him the matchup nightmare that he was in his first 3 years, as opposed to just a pure traditional running back like he has been for the last 2.
Well, John, Bob and I were just talking about this off the air. One of the things to watch, and I talked a little bit about this last week, but I think this is really important for this year, is the hearing date, not the trial, but the hearing date for Alvin Kamara is in August 12th, I believe. That date's sticking in my head for some reason. And it's important to note that the prosecution is the one that keeps asking for these continuances or delays in the hearing. And supposedly the last one was because they couldn't generate enough evidence to prosecute the case or have this go to trial. Okay. And that's really good news if you're worried about Kamara getting suspended. And I think that's why the Saints have kind of taken this approach of not being in a big hurry to get a running back, because they feel they're going to have Kamara for most, if not the entire season. Because it looks like Kamara is not going to plead no contest or plead guilty to this trial, which would trigger the NFL discipline. He would instead push for a trial, and his lawyers are going to push for a trial after the season is over with, if it gets to that point. And the NFL discipline process will not be triggered until the trial is either over or the prosecution drops the case or whatever they're going to do. I mean, that's the story right now with Deshaun Watson. We're all assuming he's going to get suspended, but the league has not made any kind of decision on what kind of discipline he's going to have, if any. So you could be mad and say they're playing Russian roulette with this, but right now I feel pretty confident that Kamara at least will be available for most of the season. Because I don't think he's going to plead no contest to this. I think he's going to fight this. And if the only evidence they have is the security camera of the incident outside the elevator, the actual fight, all the arguments and all the material that led up to that fight, that'll be a hard thing for the prosecution to prove that he was just an innocent bystander and they just jumped him. Because even the tape shows a confrontation before the fists start getting thrown. So,
you're exactly right. And the prosecution, at least initially, was going for a felony assault charge. So the onus of proof is 100% in their corner for exactly that. And if Kamara was going to plead a guilty or no contest, then we already know that that's not going to happen, because if it was, there wouldn't have been 2 or 3 continuances already, because they would have sat down with the prosecution and ironed out a deal. Now, to be fair, the league office and the real culprit for the Amelia Earhart disappearance, Roger Goodell, I had to work something. The league office does reserve the right to set down punishment on a player based off of the league personal conduct policy. What they have to be careful of, though, is that if they lay something down and it is too light, and this is what their concern realistically is, if it's too light, and then and more charges or more news starts to surface, and then then it's bad PR on them that they didn't go harsh enough on this player. We saw that play out exactly that way with Ray Rice and a couple other players.
Absolutely.
So that's what, this could still, Kamara could beat the case. Kamara could plead no contest, or the prosecution could walk away, and the league office could still step in and say, well, you still, the evidence is enough, is there for us to suspend you. But at that point, it's just going to be a proverbial slap on the wrist, a game or two. The way this thing could get a whole lot worse is, if it and the same with Deshaun Watson. If trial, grand juries, et cetera, are involved, at that point you're talking 6, 8, half the season, whole season type of thing. So that's why, if you're a Saints fan, like Alan said, the longer this gets drawn out, the more confident that you have to be that Kamara is going to receive little or no suspension, at least in 2022. And the way this has played out so far, a Kamara suspension probably wouldn't even, if it did happen this year, it wouldn't happen until at least midway through the season. And by that point, I've said many times, going into the season knowing that Kamara was going to be suspended at the start, you're taking an awful big roll of the dice, pushing your chips in the middle of the table for a couple of undrafted rookies and Tony Jones and Abram Smith, who are unproven. Well, if a suspension comes down in October or November, by that point, the Saints are going to know what they have in these guys, and who maybe at that point they do feel confident. You know what? We can roll with Abram Smith and Mark Ingram for 2, 3, 4 games.
Yeah, it is. It is dangerous not to have a plan B, and your plan B currently is Mark Ingram, and either one of those two guys, or both. Now, we have already rolled with less than that.
Oh yeah,
we had in Ingram's suspension. Remember, we had that running back from the Patriots. I can't even think of his name now.
Gillespie.
Is that Gillespie? Yeah, he couldn't even get out of his own way.
Yeah,
he couldn't even get out of his own way.
Yeah.
Got no yardage, and we just kind of faked our way through it. Okay, so that's. I don't know how that'll play out, and that's why I feel like the team is pretty confident in the fact that Kamara will at least be available for the first half of the season, at least until the trade deadline. And then you can maybe make a trade for somebody. I don't know who you would trade for. I mean, but last year we traded for Mark Ingram,
right?
But it's possible to trade for somebody. Who knows? You might be able to get Josh Jacobs away from the Raiders because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, which is just that still makes no sense to me. But
the Raiders doing Raider things.
Yeah, I mean, you got an owner who looked at Dumb and Dumber and said, "You know what? That's the haircut I want." Come on, hey man, you see this bowl? I don't want an exact bowl, so cut a little wedge, a widow's peak right here, and just stick this bowl on my head and cut my hair that way. I want to like Twiddledee and Twiddledum, So yeah, I mean, I would love, and this is just me talking out loud, but I would love to get Josh Jacobs over here as an alternative back, as a guy who runs the ball, alternates with Kamara, and gives Kamara breathers and stuff. Because I think he's one of the best backs that we just don't really talk much about. Because he plays for the Raiders. So I was shocked when he didn't pick up his 5th-year option. I really was. But that's the Raiders, Okay, so looking at this team, then what? Yeah, exactly. Well, sunk the Lusitania, sunk the Maine. Did the whole thing. Killed Ferdinand to start World War One. What we've talked about running back, and we talked a little bit about tight end, but what other holes other than those two obvious ones do you see on this roster right now? Because looks like this is going to be pretty much the team they're going to go into training camp with, and barring any kind of injury or any pickups they have before the beginning of the season, which I expect they will have a couple. What other areas do you see that the Saints probably should look at correcting or picking up some depth?
For me, Alan, is linebacker depth. And don't get me wrong. I've said a few times already. I love their 5th-round pick, DeMarco Jackson, the linebacker out of Appalachian State. I think he is an absolute monster. But again, I don't want to rely on a rookie 5th-round pick without seeing him play in an NFL game yet. And outside of DeMarco, I know they just signed Eric Wilson, from the Vikings. And Eric is a solid pickup. He'll add depth. But I don't see a lot of athleticism and coverage ability beyond excuse me, I just buried the lead, beyond Demario Davis and Pete Werner. Until Jackson shows me what he can do. Eric Wilson is solid in zone. He's not a guy I want in man-to-man coverage. Caden Ellis is not a guy I want in coverage at all. And Zach Bond is nothing more than a special teamer. So linebacker depth is what terrifies the bejesus out of me right now.
How do you feel about safety depth? Because I'm only bringing this up because, yes, we've signed the Honey Badger. Marcus May, we brought him in, but he's going to have a 3-game suspension because of a DUI. And that'll probably be the first 3 games of the season. And we'll talk a little bit about the schedule in a minute, but that's probably the first 3 games of the season, which, by the way, those are also 3 divisional opponents. So, how do you feel about the safety depth behind that? Because you've got the kid from Tampa who's trying to make a comeback, and we don't even know if he'll make it through camp.
Right.
PJ Williams, your favorite player, yours and Sean's favorite player. But I mean, and JT Gray is really a special teams guy. So, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who I like best as the nickel cornerback / safety. So how do you feel about the safety depth? Do you think they need to bring somebody in, or who could they bring in at this point?
As far as who, if I'm not mistaken, Jaquiski Tartt, from the San Francisco 49ers is still out there. He's most likely the best option available that I am aware of. It's not the safety depth that concerns me as much as early season communication. And the average NFL fan doesn't realize how important that is in a secondary. That is what helps those cornerbacks play so well in underneath coverage. It allows, Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Gardner Johnson, when he's assigned man-to-man duties in the slot, it allows them to really be ultra aggressive underneath because they know what they have behind them. They had what they had behind them, and Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams. They were all experienced together. They knew each other's movements, signals, what their tendencies were. Now, these safeties and cornerbacks are going to have to learn each other all over again. And that development is going to be stunted by Marcus May's suspension, which just so happens, thank you, Mr. Goodell, to be a game against that guy Brady from the Buccaneers, and an outstanding receiving core, by the way. So the safety depth concerns me a little bit, because Daniel Sorensen is a guy. If these other guys play out, Sorensen shouldn't even make the team. And if he does, he's definitely not a guy you want in any coverage duties whatsoever. None.
No.
None. So early in the season, they're going to have to rely on PJ Williams. We'll probably see Gardner Johnson used more of as a deeper safety. So they in turn would use them Bradley Roby more often in the slot as a third corner, while Tyrann Mathieu gets up to speed. Justin Evans is an interesting case, and I did write an article about him I think over the weekend. Evans was a hell of a safety his first 2 years in Tampa, but back to back bad Achilles injuries. He hasn't played a game since late 2018. So he faces an uphill battle to make what looks like a loaded safety position on paper, because you have Gardner Johnson, obviously, you have Honey Badger, you have Marcus May. Smoke Monday is going to make a real run for a roster spot, I think. Yeah, because of his coverage abilities. But again, do you want to rely on an undrafted? Do you want to rely on an undrafted rookie to play a major role in your defense, especially early in the year? And that's where this safety crew still I like the potential of the group, and I think ideally it has the potential to be more athletic than what we saw in the combination between Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins, with Jenkins slowing down so much in recent years, really weighing that factor down. But early season communication is going to be a big, big issue, more so than depth, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if they expect Tyrann Mathieu to really act as Malcolm Jenkins in this role and try and get everybody in the right spot, teach them, the leadership and all that stuff that Jenkins basically served. And I think that may be why they brought him in rather than just as, we need a safety. Where do you think Alante Taylor fits in on this defense right now? Do you think he comes in maybe while May is out on suspension, playing some of that, alternating with Roby and playing some of that cornerback safety hybrid position, tackling, taking on the tight end, that kind of stuff. This is sort of the stuff that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did. If you move Johnson more into the traditional safety role,
I definitely think it's possible. I remember when they drafted Alante Taylor. I was at a friend's wedding with Lauren. So I only had an opportunity to hurry up and read a quick scouting report. And my initial thought was, this kid's scouting report reads exactly like a bigger PJ Williams. But then the next day, when I had a little bit of time to go back and watch his film, I really like his man coverage capabilities. And Dennis Allen insists, that they didn't draft him to be a safety; they drafted him to be a corner. But we know that Dennis Allen demands versatility from his defensive backs. Yeah. So, I think in preseason we are going to see a lot of Alante Taylor. We're going to see him as an outside press corner. And then as games progress, we're going to see him kind of shift into an off-the-ball role that Gardner-Johnson and P.J. Williams have. And it would not surprise me at all if he was also used in some too high safety alignments. To say Alante, to automatically assume, for analysts, quote unquote, to automatically assume that Alante is going to be moved to safety, that's lazy analysis. You need to go back and watch this film. He is a very capable press corner, and he's a bigger physical guy, the kind of cornerback that Chris Richard prefers all the way back from his days in Seattle. So, Alante has some nice off-ball skills that I think are going to be utilized, but I don't think they're going to pigeonhole him into just a pure safety.
And I was looking at his size, 6 foot, 193 pounds, but he plays even bigger than that. Yeah. He plays more like a 6'2" guy, 220. He really likes to hit. And I'm really curious. He's going to be one of the guys I really want to see this preseason. I know Olave is going to get a lot of playing time in the preseason, and I know Penning is probably going to start and probably play most of the preseason games. I honestly would be surprised to see Ramczyk play much at all. I really think they're going to try and put Penning on the right and the left side, see how he does on both sides, and just see if they think he's going to be ready to start. But he's the other. There's 3 guys I think who will see a lot of playing time this year, and I think Taylor is that other guy, more so than excuse me, either the Jacksons, the Jackson 2, I guess I can call them, DeMarco and Jordan Jackson. Yeah. I think you'll see Jordan Jackson a little bit in preseason. I think he's pretty raw, so you're going to see him more in the third and fourth quarter of the second and third preseason games, maybe a little bit in the first quarter, first preseason game. But I think they're really going to try and get Olave, Penning, and Taylor up to speed right away to have those to have an impact early in the season. So let's look at the season real quick. We mentioned already the first three. Well, the preseason games, we never even talk about this, but the preseason games, because the Superdome renovations are going on, we only have one preseason game at home, and that's the Chargers. You play two of them on the road. You play at the Texans, which is kind of like a home game. It's not that far, and there's enough New Orleans fans in Tennessee, in Houston, sorry. And then you play the Packers in Green Bay. And the reason why I know that the Superdome's under renovation, I just spent the past weekend sitting out in Yeoman Stadium, and if anyone thinks that's a good idea for the Saints to play out in an open air outdoor stadium, I want to drag their ass and make them sit next to me in that stadium for 2 hours now. I was out there. It was 2 days too. It was Friday. I was there from 11 o'clock or 10:30 until noon. And then the next day, Saturday, I was there from like 9 o'clock until 11. And I'm telling you, I was dying. It was hot. The air's still, there was a breeze a little bit. And we have these floral fans with us, but good God, you just sit there and melt. You really do. The air is thick and heavy. It's miserable. And they practice out in that heat, and we give up that home field advantage. And hell, they play home game outdoor stadium in Tiger Stadium. Yeah, they do. What time is most games in Tiger Stadium?
Exactly.
7 o'clock at night. There's hey, Cajun Field, Lafayette. What time are most of the games there? 4:30, 5 o'clock. So the main part of the game is happening in the evening once the sun goes down. That doesn't happen in the NFL. No. Noon kickoff in August and September. You ain't going to catch my ass out there. I'm too old for that shit. I'll tell you what. And imagine all these people out there in jerseys. Whew, man. When I was a kid and I went to games at Tulane Stadium, I don't remember it being that hot, but maybe my dad was taking me to the games in October, November, and I get it. There's days out there. I've gone to Saints games in October, November, December, really the time where it's sunny. The sky is blue because it just had a cold front come through. It feels great. It's like 65 degrees and a breeze. I'd love to have the stadium roof open, but yeah, we're only going to do this, half the year. The other half of the year, we're having that roof closed and that AC down at 65. I'm sorry. That's the way I want to watch my football game. So.
Lauren and I are coming down for the September 18th home opener against Tampa Bay.
Okay.
It was her idea. She wants to see Tom Brady. She wants to see the Saints beat the hell out of Tom Brady. But B, the last couple of times that we were down there, it was early November, and it was a little bit cooler, especially two or 3 years ago. It was a little bit cooler than what she expected. I've tried to warn her what she's getting into with an early September in New Orleans, Louisiana. This young lady has a beautiful head of hair, but it's going to explode in that humidity.
Hey, Lauren, been there, done that. That's why I keep my hair cut short. For those of you who are old enough to know the show, I look like Epstein from Welcome Back, Kotter, back in the day. So yeah, I know. And that week 2 matchup against the Bucs at home, that's going to be a tough matchup because, May will be suspended. That Tampa is well aware that they've been swept twice by the Saints. They're
Mhm.
well aware that the next time they meet, which is in week 13, if they lose that first game, they could be a game and a half behind the Saints all season. So they're going to be playing. This is going to be the game they got to have.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. And the Saints are slow starters. There's no way getting around it. How many times does the Saints start 0-2? 0-3, 1-1, 1-3. Under Sean Payton. That first game in Atlanta, that's like another home game because there ain't gonna be nobody there except
Right.
Saints fans. I mean, the Falcons fans that show up, they're there just to watch the funeral fire. I mean, they got to bury that team already. But then again, the Saints are also, we talked about this last week, but 1-8, 1-9 all time on opening weekend versus the Falcons. And I talked about the two games, the infamous games the Saints lost on opening weekend, 1973 versus Falcons 62-7. 1979, the game my mom and dad went to, the revenge game with the bizarre overtime punt goes over Russell Oakslaven's head, and he tries to throw a pass. He hits a Falcons linebacker right between the numbers, and they score the touchdown, win 40-34. Yeah, I remember that game and that game's on YouTube, by the way. I only recommend watching the first half. The second half is no fun to watch. And it's ironically that game, that 79 Falcons game is very much like the 79 Raiders Monday night game.
Yeah.
Same kind of situation. Yeah, both games, the second quarter, the Saints offense explodes and scores like 3 touchdowns, and just looks like they can blow anybody out of the stadium. And this schedule, I'm looking at it, and it's not the 79 schedule, but it has a lot of the same teams that we played in 78 and 79 on it. They play the Bengals, they play the Eagles, they play the Steelers. In 78, they played the Steelers. They play the Raiders. Of course, they play the Falcons. So, it's a very haunting schedule for me.
It is, because it's even a reunion of the old NFC West with the Rams and 49ers on there too.
Yes, absolutely. And, I hate going to play the 49ers in San Francisco. I always have, and those uniforms, I miss them. They had changed their uniforms for a few years, and I was glad to see that because we always beat them in those different uniforms. But when they went back to scarlet and gold pants that they wore, during the Montana and Young years, that really, brought back a lot of painful memories. So okay. So how do you think this preseason will start out? Not preseason, it's regular season. Preseason, the only thing I was going to say is we play at Texas, at the Texans, at Green Bay, and we host the Chargers. I don't expect a whole heck of a lot in any of those games.
No.
Aaron Rodgers probably won't even play. Justin Herbert may play in that other game. So it's really about evaluation. But, Falcons, we talked a lot about the Bucs. Week 3 in Carolina. Who do you think to be the starting quarterback in Carolina?
I think it should still be Sam Darnold at that point. But I mean, Carolina and Atlanta, like you mentioned about the Falcons before, they both look like teams that are gunning for high draft picks to me.
Oh yeah.
Carolina of those two teams, Carolina is the more dangerous because of the weapons they have on offense. And Carolina is building one heck of a defense. So going into Carolina, which has never been an easy place for the Saints to win anyway, going into Carolina is not going to be an easy feat. We saw what happened last year. Now, granted, most of the offensive coaching staff was out because of COVID. And the Saints were just at the tip of the iceberg of their injury woes for the year. But I don't think that this is a game that the Saints could dare overlook, especially when it's sandwiched between. But that's the danger. It is a trap. It does look like a trap game to me because that comes between your Tampa Bay game in week 2 and a trip to London to play the Minnesota Vikings in week 4. So that's what concerns me about the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. And once again, like I said, we start out slow. We usually get up to speed around week 3, week 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we really start looking like, the Saints again. Yeah, Carolina does concern me because you're going to have a healthy CMC. You're going to have probably Sam Darnold hasn't hit the skids yet. I don't believe Baker Mayfield will be a Panther by this point, and I don't believe that the 49ers will trade Garoppolo yet. So, you're probably looking at Sam Darnold, and if our defense is playing well, I think our defense can put the pressure on Darnold and shut down. As long as you can take Christian McCaffrey out of the game, limit his carries, limit his explosiveness, and make him be a guy that they're going to late in the game at garbage time.
Yeah,
that's the key. Yeah, I agree, Calvin. He probably will be. But yeah, and also knowing that the team will probably have their bags packed for 2 weeks because they will probably fly out of Carolina that weekend. I mean, after that game to go to London, practice in London, get their body clocks adjusted to London time.
Yeah.
So they'll fly out there and then go play the Vikings, who we traditionally do not match up well with in London. How do you see that game playing out? I think the Vikings will be better on defense.
Yeah, I do too. And as much as I despise Kirk Cousins, and as much as I think he's a garbage quarterback, he plays like a damn Hall of Famer against the New Orleans Saints.
I know.
This is a game, despite the expected improvements that the Vikings will have on defense, and Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and the return of Irv Smith Jr., which I don't think enough people are talking about. Cousins will have his weapons on offense too. The Vikings look like a dangerous team, but the Saints match on paper. The Saints match up well against the Vikings in all their areas of strength. So if that plays out how it should, that means it's going to come down to Kirk Cousins and how well Cousins is protected and whether Jameis Winston can make plays against a young Vikings secondary. I like the chances, again, on paper, but you go to London against a team who historically, for decades, has been a thorn in the Saints' side. I hate the Vikings every bit as much as I hate the 49ers, Packers, and that team, that semi-pro team in Atlanta.
I wish I could feel as confident. If they were playing in New Orleans, Calvin, I would feel a lot more confident about them going and demolishing the Vikings. But playing in London and not having a bye week, which the Saints chose, by the way. Mickey Loomis told him he did not want to have the bye week after the London game, only because he felt it was too early in the season for a bye week. So you're coming from London and you're going to be playing at home again in Seattle, which is probably the only other team competing with Atlanta for the number 1 overall pick. You've got DJ Metcalf, you've got Tyler Lockett, but that's really about it. You're going to have Drew Lock, or who's the other quarterback? I don't even remember who the other quarterback is.
Geno Smith.
Geno Smith. That's right. Geno Smith. So, playing at home in the Dome, this should be a game that we kick the crap out of the Seahawks. I think, I think that's a concern whenever they play the 49ers. I don't think the Seahawks and the Buck excuse me, Buck fans are really threats to buy a whole heck of a lot of tickets.
Yeah.
Um so it would be a 3-game homestand, but because the Vikings game is played in London, week 6 is another game I'm really concerned about because you play the Bengals
Yeah.
and LSU homers will be wearing the half 9 LSU half 9 Cincinnati Bengal jersey out there and cheering Lamar Chase, wanting to see an offensive fireworks show, no defense. Would love to see a shootout with the Saints win, but Joe Burrow also looks great. So how do you see that game playing out with the Bengals?
Alan, that could be the game of the year. I for one don't see it being a shootout, and if it is, that definitely plays heavily into the Bengals' favor.
Yeah.
Because while Jameis Winston could put up numbers with the best of them, the more you ask Jameis Winston, the more you expect Jameis Winston to produce heavily, the more likely it is for that he's going to turn the ball over. The Saints need to play a controlled attack where it ultimately falls on their defense in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
This is what concerns me. If this game was within the first month of the year, first 2-4 games, I would feel a lot better because even though the Bengals have made significant improvements on their offensive line, my theory to that would be how well is that O-line gelled yet?
Mm-hmm.
By the 6th week, they should be pretty gelled. So that could stymie what I expect to be an extremely disruptive New Orleans pass rush this year. And if you can't get pressure on Joe Burrow, forget about it. You're in for a long day.
Yeah. I think this is going to be. I do think this is a game where. Okay, so Marcus May will probably return by week 4.
Mm-hmm.
In London, play, get a good warm up game against the Seahawks in week 5. So now you're ready for week 6. You got the defense kind of gelled. You've got the players in the right position. You know what you got going on out there. Kamara can be rolling. All that stuff is going on. So I think week 6, this is where the Saints offense just needs to dominate the Cincinnati Bengals defense and put the pressure, take Mixon out the game and put the pressure on Burrow to find someone else to throw to other than Jamar Chase. Make T. Higgins beat you. And I like Adebo versus Higgins in that matchup.
I do too. But the Bengals have Tyler Boyd as well and brought in Hayden Hurst in the offseason. So the depth of that secondary and the cohesiveness between the safety unit and the cornerbacks are going to greatly be tested. Probably their most severe test since Tom Brady in week 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So that ends what I feel is the soft part of the schedule, believe it or not, because week 7 through week 12 or week 13, really going into the bye, this is the murderer's row of the Saints schedule. You play the Cardinals in Arizona. Now, who knows what kind of team the Cardinals have, but you will have DeAndre Hopkins back in that game. What kind of quarterback Murray's going to be, I don't know at this point. I think the defense can pressure Murray if they can keep him in the pocket and act like this is not the first time they've seen a running quarterback play, which they seem to do whenever they play the Eagles. Like, hey man, I didn't know this guy could run. I mean, if we can keep him in the pocket and hit him, make him hold that ball, we should win this game. But again, this is all predicated on defense really gelling by this point. You play the Raiders at home the following week, and the Raiders, who knows how that game is going to go. Can we cover Waller? Because if we can cover Waller and we can um, stop the run, we should win this game. That's how I feel. And again, I'm talking about defensively. Um, but then we play the Ravens, who we have never beaten in the Dome. How do you
Yeah.
see that game playing out?
A lot of first of all, I don't understand why the national media is so high on the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, any team coached by John Harbaugh, you have to match blow for body blow in the trenches. Mm-hmm. So no game against a John Harbaugh team will ever be easy. But outside of that, who the hell is Lamar Jackson going to throw to? With his accuracy that there's 50-50 hits the broadside of a barn. The thing that concerns me about the Ravens is they will beat you. They will beat you up. And just like with Kyler Murray and just like with later in the season, Jalen Hurts, you have, bye honey, I love you. The Saints face the three most dangerous quarterbacks, three of the four most dangerous quarterbacks in terms of mobility on their schedule, and Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. So just like you said with Kyler Murray, who by the way can and will beat you with his arm, Lamar Jackson is a video game cheat code, with his legs, and that's what concerns me about the Ravens. That, and you have to keep them turning the ball over, and you need to establish balance and ball control against that Baltimore defense. On paper, the Saints should handle the Ravens very easily, but Lamar Jackson's legs scare me.
Yeah, exactly. Lamar Jackson seems to. I used to call it bullshit plays. That was the stuff. Whenever you played a mobile quarterback, it would make me so angry that these guys got what I call bullshit yards, and they get these bullshit schoolyard plays, and these things would work. And it's almost like the defense is so scripted, and they have to play in their designated spots, that when plays start ad-libbing, the running quarterback starts ad-libbing back there, then they don't know what to do. It's like you're not following the script, so I don't know where I'm supposed to be to stop you. And no one seems to know. Then they either do one or two things. Either everybody decides to play superhero and just says, screw it, I'm going to just go after this guy because I'm not going to do my responsibilities anymore. I'm just going to go after this guy because nobody else is getting him. Or they become frozen and just watch this guy run around when instead of going and attacking him. And, it's like the closest I used to see that was the old run and shoot teams, when the Saints would have to play the run and shoot, and they'd have to change the defense from the 3-4 to like one linebacker and four defensive linemen. And it really seemed to, it took the Saints a while to figure out how they were supposed to play this defense. And that's what kind of gets me after a while with this stuff. So I mean, I hope so. And that's what happens. It seems to be what happens with the Eagles too. So I don't know how that game's going to play out with Ravens. I'm kind of looking at that game as a loss. I just am, because we've only beaten them twice, and both times we beat them with a backup quarterback, and both times we beat them because of something unusual happening. Most recently, the most accurate kicker in the league misses an extra point. And so, it just, right, it is. Same thing. Eagles piss me off as much as the Vikings because their teams are not better than us, but they still somehow managed to win. So then here's what I'm going to call the reprieve for a minute for the Murderers Row schedule, because I don't know what's going to happen in the Raiders game. It's in the Dome. We should win that game, but I don't know. But this game in Pittsburgh, by this point, Kenny Pickett's been the starter at least if not since week 1, most of the season.
Yeah.
So, how do you see this game playing out? I think this is the game. If they lose the Ravens game, I think this is the game they come out angry and do some damage to the Steelers. Um, I think the Steelers they're going to still have a winning season, but I think they got a lot of growing pains to go through at Pickett.
Yeah, I do too. And the Steelers have a shambles of an offensive line. A secondary with all kinds of holes. But you have to be able to protect against J.J. Watt, or I'm sorry, T.J. Watt and that pass rush. And just like with John Harbaugh teams, Mike Tomlin teams will make you play whistle to whistle, and they will make you play disciplined football to beat them. The Saints have traditionally played well in Pittsburgh, folks. Even back to the Three Rivers days, with a couple exceptions against Chuck Noll's Super Steelers. But even then they battled. So I'm with you. I like the Saints' chances to come up to Heinz Field, and frankly, probably beat the Steelers by a couple scores.
Yeah, I think they should. I really do. I think the Steelers are a team that's in transition. They still have a winning season, but I think they're a team in transition. So that leads us to the next week, the big matchup, Rams versus the Saints. Defending Super Bowl champion. I can't stand McVay because he is one of those guys that, they used to talk about Sean Payton being an arrogant play caller. He's really an arrogant play caller. He and Shanahan, who we face the next week, to me, are the two most arrogant play callers in all the league. We play in New Orleans, which, granted, playing in LA, that's not like it's really, you get a big home field advantage for the Rams anyway. That just means the Rams will be wearing their Walmart made uniforms. Those are the ugliest ass things. That it's not even a true white. It's like a dirty white, and they stuck this name tag on there. It says the Los Angeles Rams. Like, no shit, really? That's what you're called? I didn't know where the hell I was. That's how generic they look.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if the Saints can get a win out of this, and once again, Cooper Kupp's the guy I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
But, if you can get a win versus the Rams, I think that game and the Bengals game probably be the two biggest home games this season. How do you see that game playing out?
Yeah, and I agree with you. Yeah, throw Tampa Bay, the Tampa home opener in, as far as the three best, most anticipated home games. I like their matchup against the Rams. This is the type of game that if Jameis Winston is going to be a championship quarterback, this is the type of game he has to prove it. And by this point in the season, we know what we're going to have. We're going to know what we're going to have in Olave. We know what we're going to have in Trevor Penning. We know what we're going to have in Alante Taylor. It's with all the newcomers. And the Rams made a run to the championship last year. Yes, they were talented, but they were lucky too. Not only on the field, but they avoided injuries, I think, maybe better than any other team, outside of that running back. And even running back was one of the only positions they had some depth last year. They don't have that depth this year. Injury bug catches up with anybody. And I will be very interested to see that receiving core won't be as explosive. You're swapping Allen Robinson in for OBJ. And Robinson's a fine receiver, don't get me wrong, but he's not going to threaten you down the field the way Beckham would. So, I just think that the Saints have a deeper team on paper than the LA Rams. And frankly, they have more star power than the Rams do. So, it's hard to say. I mean, we're sitting here in May and debating about a game in November. But based off of what we know, I'd like the Saints' chances to win, especially at home in that one.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, because injuries for the Saints too play into this as well.
Sure.
So I'm assuming that Pete has not gone into his normal, miss 8 games because of a hand injury, or Ruiz isn't rolling around in the dirt like a 2-year-old. But as long as we stay healthy, I think that game and the Bengals game are the two most important games at home that season, and will go a long way to determine how this season is going to play out. Because
Yeah.
week 12 against the 49ers, that will probably be an important game for making the playoffs, and playoff seeding. I know we're at the point now where only the number 1 seed gets to bye, but it is important to be in the top half. You want to win your division and be the top seeds because, excuse me, because you want to have that opportunity to host at least one playoff game. You don't want to play all these games on the road. Um, and the 49ers are definitely a team you're going to be competing against for a higher seed in the playoffs, assuming that and I'm not counting these games as win losses yet, but let's assume at this point that you lost maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 games so far, okay, into the schedule. And I'm not telling you which 3 they are. I'm just saying if you maybe lose 3 games, okay, and the 49ers at this point maybe have lost 3 or 4 games. How this game plays out plays into who gets the home field advantage at this point. So this is a critical game. This is a game where I want to see if Taylor has progressed enough that he can handle a guy like George Kittle,
Mm-hmm.
and if George Kittle's not hurt,
Yeah.
because he's been hurt the past couple of years too. But if this team can handle the 49ers passing and running game, because I'm not too worried about the defense. The defense is physical, but we're physical too. Who knows if Garoppolo is a starter or if they've gone to Trey Lance at this point? Don't know. But that's an important game for me. How do you see that game?
And I do think it depends on the quarterback position. For the Saints, is Jameis Winston going to be able to avoid turnovers against San Francisco? Because if he can, I like the Saints' physicality against the 49ers' physicality on that side of the ball, like you said. Defensively, the Saints need to stop the run. I think that goes without saying. But this is also perennially one of the league's best run defenses. So if they can do that, it's going to come down to the 49ers play at quarterback. And at that point, I hope Trey Lance is in over Jimmy Garoppolo, because you would think that the New Orleans secondary would be able to capitalize on Trey Lance's inexperience and maybe get a few turnovers to tip the momentum their way. 49ers Saints games, if you're anywhere close to Allen's or my age, you despise the 49ers as much as the Falcons, if not more. And any 49ers game, regardless of records, worries the hell out of you. But this matchup on paper, especially even though they go out to the West Coast, where they hardly ever have played well ever. This Saints team, as we've seen from Sean Payton in recent years, it's built to win games exactly like this. So if this is a playoff team, just like with the Rams the week before, they come out of this with a win.
I do feel fine, by the way, Jerry. It's a cough that happens. The more I talk, the more I seem to cough.
And I don't. I'm fading bad, folks, so I apologize.
Yeah, and it's funny how this works, because I really don't feel sick. And it's a hell of a thing to be doing, having a podcast and you talk all the time. Okay, so after that is a Monday night game against the Buccaneers in Tampa. Again, that's a game I think we win that one. Whether we win or lose the one at home, I still think we're going to win that one in Tampa. I just think that national TV playing Tampa in Tampa, we've beaten them with Trevor Simeon. We've beaten them with Taysom Hill. You know, you're going to beat him even with a guy like Jameis Winston. And yeah, Brian, I saw your comment about that. And my my um, my only quibble with that comparison is Matthew Stafford showed a lot more success as a quarterback in Detroit. He just had nothing around him
Yes.
versus Jameis. Stafford, when he got a little bit of talent around him, got the Lions in the playoffs. We played him in 2011 with Megatron. You know, I thought Jameis squandered a lot of the talent he had with him in Tampa, and you can't tell me that. What the hell was his name? The head coach of the Lions when they went to the playoffs, the defensive line coach right now. What is it?
Was it Caldwell? Jim Caldwell?
No, not Caldwell. No, Caldwell was later. Little beady eye guy. I can't think of his name right now.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, he's defensive line coach, and he's just a little beady eye guy, but he was not a very good coach, and I can't see him being a superior coach to any of any of the Bucs coaches they had prior to Arians that coached Jameis, just because he was a defensive coach, and the Bucs gave Winston offensive coaches. You know, so it just. I think Jameis has, if he can minimize his mistakes and get the ball out of his hands and let his playmakers make plays and take what the defense gives you, Winston has a good chance to be successful. He gets in trouble when he gets overconfident in his arm and thinks he can make any throw in the field.
Yeah.
Or passes on making the easy throw because he wants to make the big play. And I think that is a mindset he has to unlearn to do. Take what the defense gives you, live, and Breeze told, and he's repeated it. Breeze told him this, live for the next down. Don't try and get it all in one play. And if this team falls behind by 10 or more points, I worry about that with Winston, because I think that's when Winston feels like he's got to get it all back in one series or one play. And that's not what we need to do. He needs to be patient. And if anything, except for the last 10 seconds of the game, go back and watch that Saints-Vikings playoff game in the second half when we're down, what was it, 17 or 14 to nothing? It might have been 14-3. I forgot what the score was, but I think it was 17. But basically, the Saints in that second half just patiently went after the Vikings and started going at their defense. And that's when Michael Thomas broke Xavier Rhodes. I mean, Xavier Rhodes on the sideline crying. He was the Marshawn Lattimore of that team, and Thomas broke him. He was mad. He was crying. He was losing his shit on the sideline. And had that 10 seconds with Marcus Williams not happen, that's probably one of the greatest comebacks next to the damn 2011 divisional game versus the 49ers. Greatest comebacks in Breeze and Saints history right there. So that's the kind of thing I think that Winston needs to learn to do, because the Saints never panicked, just sat there and ran their offense, ran their plays, and the plays started happening, and they just took it away.
This is a debate for another day.
Right.
I'm running on E right now.
Yeah, I know. So last two games, and we can skip over the 49er, I mean the Falcons and the Panthers, because the Panthers game, who knows who's going to be playing that game. by that point because the Panthers may be wanting to lose that game to get the number one pick as well. They're probably playing with an interim head coach. So the only two games, and the same with the Falcons, but week 16, week 17, both of them on the road, the Browns and the Eagles. Neither team we match up well with.
No.
What do you see happening in those two games?
First of all, as far as the murderer's row that happened earlier in the season, based off of the schedule, that was unavoidable. A murderer's row is going to happen at some point. Yeah. This is the portion of the schedule, the real secret behind Area 51, Roger Goodell. This is the point that pisses me off the most. Back-to-back weeks in Pennsylvania and on Lake Erie. In late December and early January, Goodell, F you. F you.
Yeah, you play Christmas. You play Christmas Eve and New Year's Day.
Yeah. If Deshaun Watson is out for the year, then even with the bad history and the matchup problems against the Browns, the Saints should go into Ohio and roll over this team. They should. Because without Deshaun Watson, the Browns are toiling in last place of the NFC North, fighting it out with Pittsburgh.
And I don't expect Baker Mayfield to still be part of the team at this point. No. I think he's somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Eagles game concerns me more because of what we've seen the last couple years, against that Philadelphia team. And it's a Philadelphia team that should be much better this year than they were the previous 2 years. The Eagles, I think, are going to win the NFC East. So suffice it to say, I do.
Over Dallas?
Yes. Suffice to say, I think that this is a game that's very crucial to both teams for playoff seedings at this point. If the Saints are going to be as good as what I think they are, and I'm right about the Eagles, then it's going to be crucial for both teams because it's a rematch that they could see later in January.
Absolutely.
But to do that, obviously the Saints have to take care of business at the mistake by the lake first. But like I said, I see them rolling. I see the Browns being the Browns again, and the Saints coming out of there with a victory. The Eagles game, on the other hand, it does burn the ass of this Saints defense at how poorly they played the last 2 years against Philadelphia. So I would think that they would finally learn their lesson and come with those chin straps buckled. But it's not going to be. I think the Saints would win this one again based off of what we know now of the two teams. But of these two games, it's the Eagles game that worries me far more.
It's interesting you said that. Do you think that the Eagles probably will win the NFC East if Dallas is in bad shape and Dallas may have even fired Mike McCarthy or will fire Mike McCarthy? He's dead man walking by this point. That'll be interesting because then you could possibly be looking at that Week 17 game as a rematch 2 weeks later in the playoffs.
Easily.
And if, let's just say for the sake of argument, the Saints they have 4 or 5 losses by this point. I'm not saying where. I'm just saying if it's 4 or 5 losses here, and the Eagles have 4 losses, that, again, just like the 49ers game, you're determining playoff seeding. Where are you going to go? Do you want to be in Philadelphia again in January? This time now 2 weeks later, not New Year's Day? Or do you want to be in the Dome in 2 weeks? I mean, that's an important game. So, yeah, I think you've got a lot of possibilities down here at the end of the week, end of the schedule with the Falcons and the Panthers, probably both dead men walking games that you probably have a good shot of getting some cheap wins. You may still be playing for something in week 18 if you haven't won a division already. But yeah, the Eagles game, I think, is the most after the 49ers game and the Bucs, week 13, I think the Eagles are the most important game the rest of the season. If if you lose all 3 games, the 49ers, at the Bucs and at Eagles,
You're
it'll
sitting
be
home.
really, yeah, it'd be really hard to make the playoffs, even with the expanded. You're basically playing, maybe competing for seed number 7. You know, so you cannot lose those games. So yeah, I feel the same way, Bob. I really do. I look at those games and I really think that's where this team has to make a break. And injuries, that I can't emphasize that enough. Injuries will determine how well this season goes.
No doubt.
Um,
Injuries, Jameis Winston, and how Dennis Allen responds to the to coming out of the shadow of Sean Payton.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I really want this team to really rely on this defense to carry them for a
Mhm.
few games. I know it's very Jim Morris sounding, but at this point, you really need that right now, because there's a lot of uncertainty in this offense,
Mhm.
because you don't have Sean Payton, because you've got so many new pieces in there, because you have so many question marks with the offensive line and everything else. You really need to lean on your strength, and your strength right now is what you inherited from Sean, a really, really good defense
Yeah.
with really, really good defensive coordinators, a head coach is defensive minded. You got strong special teams. We
Yeah.
haven't even talked about this, but Will Lutz should be back and healthy. And oh yeah, thank you, John, for reminding me. I wanted to mention that. Today is Jim Moore's birthday. I think he turns 90 today.
Man, we're
Hold on.
old.
I know. But let me just. I want to make sure. Before he turns 88 today. 88 today. He was born in
Happy birthday,
35.
coach.
Yes. Yes. Um, Former teammate of Jack Kemp, the former congressman and Buffalo Bills quarterback. So
Yeah.
yeah, playoffs. Diddly poo. Here we go. Always saying, you think you know, but you really don't know. But yeah, Jim Moore's birthday. Happy birthday, Coach. You're still, even though he's in his late 80s, he still looks so damn good. I mean,
He does.
I've been watching some old 80s Saints games. It seems like he was gray forever.
I
He
know.
never really had black hair. And you look at him today and he still looks the same. But it's just always been my regret he never won a playoff game, because he
Yeah.
really deserved to win one. It
He was the
wasn't,
Marty Schottenheimer of the NFC.
yeah, and it really was that his teams weren't built. Unfortunately, they weren't built to succeed in the postseason, because you needed that extra. And I almost blame for a lack of a running back. He really needed a running back to carry those teams, and he just never really got that. Um, Dalton Hilliard's best year, 89. They make the playoffs. No, they don't. Yeah, they do. They make the playoffs, play the Bears.
No, that
No,
was
that was
90.
90. 90. No,
90.
89. 89, they make the playoffs. They missed
Right.
the playoffs. 88, they missed the playoffs. Those are Dalton Hilliard's 2 best years.
Mhm.
By 1990, he gets hurt. In 91, 92, you're relying on, an overweight Ironhead Hayward. You're relying on Vaughn Dunbar, Fred McAfee, those
Yeah.
guys. In 87, they just weren't ready yet. They weren't.
Right.
They had a lot of things that worked out in their favor, and they just weren't ready. So anyway, I know you're on E. I appreciate you sticking with us. Poor Bob, I'm holding him up. It's 10:45 his time, so I know he's ready to go to bed. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully Sean feels better. Bob feels better. Anybody who's sick right now feels better. Uh, that's the thing about COVID. We didn't have any flu or anything. Now that COVID's kind of on the decline, everyone's getting everything else right now, including
Yeah.
me. In the meantime, thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Whatever.